We're now about a month into Crucible League, and a month into the meta report series, something that I've been very happy to produce. I've gotten the chance to talk about some starter builds, and which builds are the biggest winners and losers of the 3.21 patch. Then I moved on to get into things that were only made possible due to Crucible trees. Certain ones have absolutely taken over the meta, and others aren't really being played that much despite being super strong, probably because they're also super annoying to play. Then for week 3, I dove into unique item combinations. Sometimes 2 uniques are, in fact, better than 1. And today, I wanted to highlight a few builds you might not be aware of. Things played by notable players in game modes that are really different. Something like solo, self-found, or hardcore. Now, even if you play softcore trade, don't click away just yet, because many of these things could apply to you. Especially if you don't like dying, want to play something completely unique or different, or maybe just have a little bit of a budget and want to emulate something in SSF. Now, this will be the last meta report for Crucible, but if you enjoy it, do be sure to look back on episodes 1, 2, or 3. And don't worry, for next league, there's going to be more meta reports. For now, let's dive into it. Starting with a name that you might find familiar. I league started RF, and it seems only fitting that if I'm going to league start RF, I should probably talk about Pox. So first off, Pox is playing a solo self-found Crucible, Righteous Fire Chieftain. The big difference between Chieftain and Juggernaut is Chieftain gets inbuilt defensive layers for Fizz taken as LE, very good at mitigating physical damage, but not nearly as good at mitigating LE or Chaos, which is where a combo that I talked about last week comes in. The Fourth Vow for mitigating Chaos damage, and Glorious Vanity Zabaqua for Divine Flesh, that then takes a portion of your elemental damage as Chaos, thus applying your armor to it as well. This means that you stack armor. In Pox's case, he has around 35,000, though I suspect it's a little higher, accounting for things like Immortal Flesh in his flasks. Using that armor to mitigate physical, fire, cold, lightning, and chaos damage. The all-in-one defense package. Now, why is he a Chieftain? Because he can. Admittedly, there's not a specific reason to go Chieftain over Jug at the moment, except for the fact that you get Salio for free, not needing something like a Taste of Hate, and the damage from the various nodes like Ramakos and Valakos is also pretty good. You're getting Endurance Charges, another very strong layer of defense, but you're also getting Regen, which is good for RF, so I can see this being a well-rounded choice if you're in solo self-found. Does it overall beat out Jug? I'm not so sure, but I'm sure Pox has had more than enough Jugs recently, and is looking to try something else. As I remember, he's also successfully played Righteous Fire on several other ascendancies, including Champion. Now, what are some choices that he's making which seem uniquely SSF to me? The first is this, the Small Cluster Jewel that doesn't have 35% increased effect, and doesn't have some completely insane passive. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty darn good, and it definitely caps out his Chaos Res, something that would be a little bit of a struggle otherwise in SSF, but it's not something you'd often see in trade. Now, with 6% fire, 6% chaos, in SSF, this is absolutely a dream item. Looking around elsewhere, we've got a fractured fire dot multi-weapon. Not too much else going on. Then again, you don't need that much else, +1 fire skill gems. A good old burning damage conch helmet, not rolled with Essence of Horror. These are pretty common, and you could even get one just chaos spamming Elder helmets. Shield with some max chaos res, making you tankier via Fourth Vow and Glorious Vanity. A little bit of life regen and crafted life. A ring for minimum frenzy charges. Having frenzy charges increases your speed, plus it's a good bit of damage. Watch out when clicking altars though. An amulet with fire dot multi. Usually in Trade League, you'll see people opt for generic dot multi since the roll's a little higher, but in some cases, you just gotta go with what you got. And of course, Immortal Flesh, which is a really great starting item. Overall, this isn't that much different from an RF Jug or even an RF Inquisitor. I guess the Glorious Vanity is something that you wouldn't see on Inquisitor, but it's still RF, and you're still following the same general framework. But this is just one example of how builds in Path of Exile can be pretty darn flexible. Next up, we've got Quantric, who is playing a build that is one of the biggest memes in Path of Exile. That's right, this is the Unironic Poison Tornado shot, and it might actually be good this time. Because Pathfinder is incredible. It is one of the best Chaos Dot Ascendancies ever in the game's history. especially if you happen to hit stuff, so you can actually stack that wither up. We've got some items that you'd expect, and some items that you might not expect. First up, Dendrovate, really solid starter poison chest. Then Death Rush, yeah, it's good, increases your speed, adds defenses, adrenaline is great. Azadaths, I mean, name something that goes together better than Pathfinder and Explodey. Alright, there's quite a lot of things that go better, like flasks, but Azadaths are a pretty common choice, and Temporal Chains on hit is very good. The Explodey kind of sort of hurts your proliferation, but Temp Change is really good, though it balances out in your favor. And then we get to the unusual choice, Ming's Heart. It isn't unusual because the item is bad. The item is a ton of damage. But in Hardcore, since when are players looking at damage rather than defenses? And with 25% reduced maximum life, this should be making him far squishier, right? Well, this goes to show just how far defenses in Path of Exile have come from the past. Previously, this would be a build with 6 or maybe even 7k life. But now, you can get away with frighteningly few defenses while still being surprisingly tanky, through mechanics like suppressing spell damage. You can also balance your defenses, grab something like an Elemental Flask. It'll have higher uptime and can reduce your skill costs. Maybe get some armor or evasion rating, to both prevent you from taking unnecessary hits and reduce the damage from the hits you do. And overall, this is a build that doesn't surprise me too much. We've even got Ghost Dance for ES recovery. And if you're not using ES as Eldritch Battery, that is rather relevant. 405 might not be a ton, but it's definitely enough to buffer some of those bigger hits. Would I expect this build to go up against Uber bosses? No, not at all. But it's far from a 2k life MF Deadeye that falls over when a white mob looks at it. And so now let's quickly look over some of the rare items. We've got a very nice Fizz Bow. Looks like almost perfect prefixes. Suffixes are kind of whatever. Going for some Suppress with Fizz taken as Chaos. Good old Avoidance Boots, this is how you immune ailments. And a Dot Multi-Quiver. About what I'd expect, to be honest. The tree also makes sense. We're getting extra projectiles everywhere since this is a Tornado Shot build. Increased Flask effect to be super tanky against lightning damage. Flask charge gain for Pathfinder things, and of course, the Chaos stuff. This is overall a very solid build, and one that I never thought I'd be talking about unironically. Now, to keep with the theme of builds in Hardcore plus Pathfinder, name a more iconic duo, we've got Dan's Poison Forbidden Rite. Yep, you heard me correctly. And oh boy, is this character interesting. In fact, this is the most interesting one on the list to me personally. Dan has done it again, putting together a masterpiece of a build. He's using the 4th Vow combo that I mentioned earlier, while taking it to the next level with Mahuxolotl's Machination. Now, instead of just taking half as Ellie, half as Chaos, he's taking half as Fire, half as Chaos, by converting all of the cold and lightning damage with Lethal Pride, Warriors under Rakiata for Tempered by War. This way, you don't have to worry about your lightning res, you don't have to worry about your cold res, you just get as much fire res as possible, as much chaos res as possible, and as much fizz taken as to completely negate all the damage that you take. If you don't believe me, check out his video where he's literally just tanking Uber Elder as if it was no Uber and just a random mob in his map, actually. Diving in, there's a few other interesting choices, like Anathema, nice cheeky bleed immunity, chance to gain power charges, and curse limit equal to max power charges, so Dan's getting 3 curses for the price of 1 ring. This lets him anoint Sovereignty without having to path up here for the +1 curse. Then he's also using Replica Sorrow of the Divine. This not only gives infinite life recovery to trigger the Everlasting Sacrifice from Mahuxolotls, but Eldritch Battery to effectively erase skill costs. We've got a cast speed wand, some spell suppression gear, cause why not be suppress capped? I mean, being tanky is pretty hard work these days if you want perfect gear, and Dan certainly got it. Double plus gems amulet. Oh yeah, he is playing Forbidden Rite, the skill that damages you based on your life, but you wouldn't know it as you watch him cast, and his health literally doesn't move. That's because this is so resistant to damage and has just a little bit of gain on hit. We've also got a Watcher's Eye for Fizz taken as Ellie from Purity of Fire, which helps balance out the fact that when you're wearing 4th Vow, you do still need to deal with physical damage. And then coming down here, the last interesting choice, one that I yoinked from my own Poison Spark build, is the use of Arctic Armor. This got quite a lot of buffs, and you're stationary a decent amount of a time, especially when you have the defenses to face tank bosses, so it's a great choice, but one that you don't see used too often. Overall, Dan's build is excellent, and I can absolutely recommend it to anyone. If you want to watch a video, then it'll be down in the link below or up in the card. Check it out after this. Finally, I wanted to talk about Waggle's build, also from Crucible Hardcore. Lightpoacher got a lot of attention after its rework for being a really cool item, giving 5% of Fizz's extra chaos for each element per spirit charge. You stack spirit charges by having Abyss Jewels. In this case, Waggle's got 2 in the helmet and 2 in the belt, for 4 total. Then a whole bunch over here on the rest of his gear, since he is taking the jewel tree, pathing all over the place just to get more jewel sockets. I'd probably be doing that too if I was playing a Lightpoacher build. He's on an Inquisitor, so we're doing Inquisitor stuff, splitting the damage. Personally, I'm still a bigger fan of Aegis Aurora and not splitting damage, but Unironic is also a popular choice and pretty solid if you aren't using Aegis Aurora. Now, Waggle is also a big fan of Leadership's Price, and so am I. It's an absolutely great amulet, especially when you're using something like this, Melding of the Flesh, so that you don't care about any of the penalties. You just stack 1 resistance, in this case cold, as high as it can go, and get 90% all elemental resistance. Be sure to check out my video after this if you want to know more about how melding works. You gain spirit charges on kill, and trigger spirit burst when you use a skill. This means Waggle is constantly gaining charges, losing charges, gaining charges, losing charges. Plus, he's playing Exsanguinate, a skill that has amazing clear. Combining it with Spell Echo, Trinity, Added Fire, Awakened Chain, and Empower support, which overall doesn't seem like it does too much damage, until you remember that all of his damage is right here. Let's do a little math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can do basic math. And that also means 8 times 5%, or 40% of physical damage, is extra fire, cold, and lightning. This is, of course, before accounting for Trinity Resonance and a lot of other things. 120% of the base damage is extra elemental. Convert things over to cold, and you've got a really solid build. I would say that personally, if I was going to play a Lightpoacher build, it would probably be something like this. Now, in softcore trade, I'd go Aegis Aurora instead of a Colossal Tower Shield like this. That said, it is a goddamn amazing item, and I bet there's a Crucible tree to match. Remember, with melding, you erase the downsides, so something like +4 max cold, -3 max lightning wouldn't really be a downside. That's just +4 max, which erases the nerf to melding of a -4 all max, letting you easily get 90%. This is a really cool build, and it looks amazing in action. Yes, I did drop by Waggle's stream a couple times to confirm this for myself, and I highly recommend you do the same. It's something a little bit different, which probably would go under the radar since it's probably not an S tier build, but definitely a cool one, and one that, if you play it and like mapping, you'll have a good time with. And that brings the Week 4 meta report to a close, and the meta report to a close in general for the rest of Crucible League. But I'm curious, if you've watched all the episodes so far, which did you enjoy the most? And if you didn't, what other topics do you want to see covered here? Do be sure to let me know those thoughts down in the comments below. If you prefer reading to watching, then there's going to be a full meta report over on Maxroll that contains some additional information like community highlights and currency tips. I'll try to remember to put that link down in the description, but in case I forget, you probably know where to find Maxroll by now. With that said, thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed, and a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. If you're looking for something else to watch after this, maybe check out Dan crushing Uber Elder, my recent crafting video, why Melding of the Flesh is so good, any of the previous meta reports, or the video that's on screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.